I think Zorin's an interesting character. I just don't think they utilized him well enough for that particular story, because they were like, well, we're trying to remake Goldfinger, so let's make it more like Goldfinger, where they had this really cool, like, oh, no, he's an experimental, like, psychopath, and you know, he has high intelligence and maybe even like super strong, but we never really see that as much as I think we should. Like, we see the psychopathic nature of him, especially when he's killing all the guys in the mine.
But like, how is he not smart though? But is that what you're saying?
It's just like he's on a computer. I mean, he's keen, but it's like I wish we could have seen a little bit more stuff with that. Yeah. And it's just like his whole motivation is like greed, where I'm like, okay, like it's just a very Lex Luthor-y.
But what about Goldfinger then? You talked up loving Goldfinger.
I do. But I
what's
think
the difference?
Here's the biggest difference.
Goldfinger speaks well. He actually has a point. He has a plan.
Hold on, Scott.
He carries it out.
How does Max Zorin not have any of those things?
This movie doesn't really. It's like he was experimented, and then he was a KGB agent, and then it's like greed. Like, he just wants money. But I wish there was more. Like, had there been some kind of revenge or something else in there besides that I'm doing this with money. That's where I'm like, I get what you're saying, Charlie. Like, they do Goldfinger a little bit better in some aspects, but there's a part of me that's like, yeah, but it just feels like you copy and pasted rather than try to find a new story that's more interesting. And even though you create this interesting character, which I mind you, like, it's just exposition dialogue that a character says that, oh yeah, by the way, Zorin was a genetic freak, and he possibly, like, they allude to, he's like, could he also have been one of these genetic freaks kind of thing? And then
here's the thing.
They don't do much with that after that.
I read what you're saying, but I think that's overpowered by the psychopathy. I think the fact that he, like, because Goldfinger was not they both love gold. He wasn't necessarily a psychopath. He just loved gold so much that it was greed.
This is gold, Mr. Bond. All my life I've been in love with its color, its brilliance, its divine heaviness. I welcome any enterprise that will increase my stock.
But it was an interesting plot twist where it wasn't stealing, it was the destruction.
Yeah, that worked to me really well.
I think Zorin being a psychopath is that twist to where it's almost like it's not even greed, because he doesn't need money. He just desires ultimate power. He just like more power.
More power.
I don't even think the money has anything to do with it. I mean, when he's just mercilessly killing everybody in like one of the greatest bad guy moments ever, he's laughing. I mean, even when he has a Joker-esque death where he's like,
he laughs at the end.
The guy's just nuts and power hungry, and that's where Goldfinger is a little more subtle. I think Max Zorin is awesome, and I think Christopher Walken is great as Max Zorin.
I'm not saying I dislike Zorin. I'm just pointing out that I feel like there was some missed potential there where they could have gone in a little bit more.
But like, for him to get revenge, dude, like okay, he wants revenge against the West because of they won World War II or something. I think that would be kind of below Max Zorin. That would be almost too emotional. Like, Max Zorin doesn't have emotions. The guy is literally a psychopath because he's a genetic freak. All he cares about is power.
Except if you compare the two, Goldfinger had more iconic lines.
Take a fucking drink right now. Take a fucking drink.
Even
do you expect me to talk? No, Mr. Bond, I expect you to die. Okay, we get it.
Yeah, but and so okay, I'm siding with McCurdy in the fact that this guy was a genius psychopath, right? But we've barely scratched the surface. He had so much more potential than scenes where he went, so so
what was he supposed to say? Did you accomplish the task? Yes,
something
I did.
More than so.
Yeah, but okay, then write a line right now. Like, what was he? Did you do it? Did you murder the guy? I don't.
Fair enough. I agree with McCurdy. He was underused.
He's a
I
good,
don't know. I
again,
don't know.
like I'm saying, it's a really interesting backstory. They say it in the dialogue, he's a psychopath, but how many other villains have we come across that have some kind of psychopathic tendency? And then this movie, we're just highlighting it.
But not officially, like not where they are literally
like,
a genetic creation gone wrong.
What's his face? Fish Hands. How is he not a psychopath? Or Drax is a psychopath? Like they're still doing these megalomaniac things. How does that not psychopathic tendency?
Those guys care about people.
I intend to change the face of history.
By destroying the world?
By creating a world. A new and beautiful world beneath the sea.
A new super race, a race of perfect physical specimens.
Max Zorin is such a psychopath that he's even willing to sacrifice Mayday just on a whim.
But Mayday and my men.
Yeah, a convenient coincidence.
Mr. Zorin, those men are loyal to you.
We haven't seen that yet. I mean, as we talked about in depth in the Moonraker episode, these guys are doing things that really aren't for their own gain per se, as much as it's some grand sacrifice towards some ultimate dream that is supposed to better things for everybody.
The only hope for the future of mankind.
Like gods, your offspring will return to Earth and shape it in their image.
But they do it by way of killing a whole bunch of people. It's the same argument as like, is Thanos a psychopath just because he kills a bunch of people? Or don't you believe that he actually is well-intentioned? The argument is just whether or not genocide is actually a noble cause, which obviously it's not.
And when we faced extinction, I offered a solution.
Genocide.
But random, dispassionate, fair to rich and poor alike. They called me a madman. And what I predicted came to pass.
Thanos, Stromberg, and Drax would all tell you that they're the good guy, but Max Zorin is just a bad dude who is only out for his own empowerment.
To me, it's just not as interesting as some of the other characters we've seen, and not that I don't like. And I think that's the problem. Is I think that between the character, how he's written, and Walken's performance, there's something really good there because Walken can perform. Like Walken's perfect at performing that psychopathic, crazy character. I just feel like, great, we got this cool character. Could there be more to what he wants other than to destroy Silicon Valley so he makes more money? I felt like there was something missing there that could have been explored. And I only feel that way because it's like, oh, this is a copy paste of Goldfinger.
But dude, but like
that's where
we're talking world domination. Like you own
It's not
all of the microchips on the planet and you run the planet. Jeffrey Bezos. Jeffrey Bezos.
And
come on.
I also think there's holes in that plan to just suggest that. So, like this movie wants you to know that, like, yes, Silicon Valley creates
Scott,
all the.
How are you not running the planet if you control all the microchips, especially microchips that are EMP resistant?
Magnetic pulse.
Yes, Minister. One burst in outer space over the UK, and everything with a microchip in it, from, well, the modern toaster to the most sophisticated computers and our defense systems, would be rendered absolutely useless.
We'd be paralyzed at the Russians' mercy.
Who's to say they can't make a mass-producing center somewhere else? They have that same technology.
The equivalent of Silicon fucking Valley?
Over 250 plants, employing thousands of scientists, technicians. This is the heartland of electronic production in the United States, which accounts for what, 80%? Of the world microchip market.
You destroy Silicon Valley and you have all those chips.
So Zorin has an equal Silicon Valley somewhere else. He doesn't right now.
No, he's been stockpiling. And he's going to form an international cartel, as he said.
We are now in the unique position to form an international cartel to control not only production, but distribution of these microchips.
So who's to say the British can't make it at the same speed he can?
Okay, Scott.
He's already got
right
him.
now, there's shortages all over the planet because of COVID and shit, right? If you
businesses are going to buy from whoever's got it.
If you're stock, like, okay, right now there's a microchip shortage. If you have if you have stockpiled microchips and Silicon Valley gets destroyed tomorrow, you're made.
Yeah, in the current economy.
and this
This is the
fictional
1980s.
economy. And this fictional economy. Like, suddenly this guy has...
How are you attributing a fictional economy to the 1980s?
Because I'm trying to illustrate that you're fucking wrong, because if you have a massive stockpile of microchips and then you destroy Silicon Valley, the value of your microchips
I get it. He has a
just like
stockpile,
Goldfinger.
for sure.
Yeah.
Can I vote that we move on to another topic?
That's
I
what
feel
I
like
was
we're going
thinking.
in circles.
Okay. Yeah, we are going in circles.
We're going in circles.
But let me just circle back though, real quick. Just
Let me just do one
no,
more.
just talking
Let me start
no,
one
just
more
talking
time.
about Goldfinger.
All right.
So again, with Goldfinger, it has a prologue that doesn't weigh in on the plot, whereas this does. As you know, McCurdy already said, the gangster scene doesn't make any sense. With this, it's like, hey, let me show you out. And then Mayday pulls her little switch. And that's kind of like what we talked about with Stromberg, where Stromberg has this big table and you just think it's in some castle somewhere. And then it's like, oh, it's underwater. And then with this, it's just a boardroom. And then suddenly it's revealed like, oh, we're high up in the air. So not only is the way that Zorin kills that one guy fun and creative, but it also makes sense that he has to kill that guy to maintain the secrecy of his plot. And for all we know, he really only kills that guy and the leader of the miners, right? Who's also sitting at that boardroom table. Whereas with Goldfinger, he takes that one guy out and sends him on his way with the gold that he later has to pry apart from the car, whereas he could have just left that guy with all the other gangsters to die by gas. It's stupid. Oddjob kills the guy by shooting him, and then he goes and crushes the car, and then they have to bring the car back and separate the gold from it.
Forgive me, Mr. Bond, but I must arrange to separate my gold from the late Mr. Solo.
Get rid of one of those. Like, don't load it up with the gold. Like, why load it up with the gold when you're just going to have to separate it later? Or how once you shoot the guy, you don't need to crush the car anymore? But how amazing would it have been, though? And maybe it's because it was the 60s. But imagine if instead Oddjob just like pulled off and the guy's like, hey, you missed the exit, you stupid idiot. And then he just pulls into the car lot. He gets out and locks the doors. And then the guy's just stuck in there as the magnet comes down and picks him up. And he's like, no, hey, pounding on the windows and it's being crushed. And he's like,
that would be cooler.
Like, that would have been amazing. But instead, they did the stupidest thing.
I have a feeling that's what it was intended, but obviously,
I would
this is
hope
the 60s,
so.
that couldn't be done.
Bond also solves the problem with his dick. On one end, that's fun because it's Bond, but on the other hand,
it feels too at Deus Machina.
And I will say on that note, I never really gave Oddjob proper props for the fact that one of the lieutenants of Goldfinger is immediately willing to defuse the bomb because he doesn't want to die, and Oddjob kills that guy because Oddjob's just loyal to the end, whereas with Mayday, she gets betrayed.
And I thought that creep loved me.
So she ends up being the catalyst for how, you know, the whole situation gets reversed, which is awesome. Her redemption moment is great. But like Oddjob would have still been fighting Bond down in like the bomb pit or whatever. And again, in the same way that we got the satisfaction of seeing the detonator go off in Octopussy instead of just a counter stopping, we get to see the detonator go off in this one too. So much more satisfying of a ticking clock than just like tick, 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 done. Okay, we're done. Yeah. As far as similarities go, to keep going, the stud farm is straight out of Goldfinger, but also very reminiscent of Drax's compound in Moonraker, right? The whole French
also filmed
connection.
In France, yeah.
So moving forward, right away, they're like, here's this microchip. We found it in Siberia. It was clearly stolen from this company that Max Zorin recently bought. Because of that coincidence, they immediately began investigating Max Zorin. They go to the English version of the Kentucky Derby or whatever.
Yeah, I thought we were in Kentucky.
No, that was, I believe, in France. I don't think, that was in Britain.
You narrow-minded
Thank you.
Wow. The Kentucky Derby? That's the only thing I understand.
You're narrow-minded.
Oh my God. Oh, the British have been racing horses far longer than we ever were. But I thought we were at the Kentucky Derby.
Initially, I thought that.
There's hats and top hats. And British people are there?
Well, I was like, why is Moneypenny there? Like, they flew her out too?
Yeah. And Q. They brought Q as well. They brought
They're
everybody
just enjoying
out
the
for
race
that.
and everyone else is working. I was like, what is this?
Yeah.
Like a corporate day off?
Exactly, yeah. So at that point, we meet Tibbet, and Tibbet's like, it's pretty shady that his horrible horse won this derby. And then we have our one zany assassin scene, but it's Mayday, so it's not exactly zany. It's just kind of, it's a little
It's
goofy.
silly.
It is silly.
It's not the worst thing
no.
in this movie, but it's
The butterflies.
Yeah, papillon.